Welcome to another episode of the Pepe Soup Talk Show, where we bring to the table movers and shakers in African diaspora. We have the pleasure of speaking with an investment group today, Cascade Ventures. They are bridging the gap among health, wealth, and the digital world for the Black and Latinx communities. They offer different investment opportunities, education, networking, and they invest across a broad range of investment vehicles and asset classes. And so I'm going to let these guys go ahead and introduce themselves, but we're very excited to talk with them about how they came together and the mission that they're on. So without further ado, welcome Pepe Soup Talk, Cascade Ventures.
Thank you.
Yes.
You want to kick us off?
Sure. Brandon Johnson, so one of the general partners and founders for Cascades Ventures. So have a little bit of history and background, mostly in real estate, and currently a senior product manager at the Boeing Company.
Hi, everyone. Jollof Morris, one of the general partners of Cascades Ventures. I've done a bunch of investing in both real estate and small businesses and startups, and I'm currently an associate at Carney.
And Jacob Zagaba, also general partner with Cascades Ventures. And my background, I'm an engineer, like everybody else in this group, and a lot of different experiences. But most of my investing background has been in real estate as well as small businesses and startups. I currently work at a late stage startup called Via, where I'm the director of our expansion team.
Cool. So I hear heavy real estate background that you guys have. Like, how did you guys come together?
So we all went to school at Georgia Tech. Most of us were pursuing either masters or PhDs. So we met over a decade ago now at this point, and all of us found our way, graduating, supporting each other during that time, and then went off eventually to land in consulting careers at one point or another. And many have gone out now into industry. But throughout those years, as we've continued to support each other, we've, just been working on a bunch of investments in siloed and sharing information with each other. And so as that has happened more and more, we said, what would this look like if we formalized this and shared this more with the rest of our network? So we were doing it amongst ourselves that had interest, but really saying, how can we take this out to the network and really make a bigger impact?
Cool. And again, I hear, from each of you mentioned being, mentioned being involved in real estate and having background in real estate. However, I noticed when, we spoke about sort of mission of the investment group, you guys are looking at a broad range of investment vehicles. What specifically encouraged you to focus on more of a broad range rather than a niche, or rather than even just real estate specifically?
Absolutely. I'm glad to grab this one. So look, we've been investing together for a while, and we've all done different deals, right? So smaller groups of us together or doing different things. And as we were talking it all through, I think we were like, hey, we've done a bunch of real estate and done really well. We've done it in purpose, right? With purpose and doing things we want. We've done some small business investing. We've done some startup investing. And every time we've done it, we've done well, and like we've moved forward, we've made money, but we've also like done things that we care about. We made progress in the community. Like we're not just landlords. Like we have, family and friends. We're living in properties and real communities and a part of that community. That's important to us. So for us, Cascades wasn't about saying, hey, we want to go and invest in like companies or just do this. It was like, what do we see in our community that needs to really be worked on? And we want to invest in that. And for us, the health divide, the wealth divide, and the digital divide, right? Like those are the three things that are very much impacting our community. You can talk about COVID, you can talk about, the housing crisis that we have. We can talk about all the technology that's coming and what that's doing in our community. And we say, hey, we love what we do. We love our friends. We have awesome networks. Let's all get together and do something about this and, move our capital to make a difference.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that, I think one of the things that we were thinking about is that impact that Jacob said. What's the best way for us to do that, right? I think finding interesting companies with Black Latinx founders who are having impacts in those particular divides, we felt like that would be a great way to try and close those gaps essentially, right? And we're still going to do that with some of our real estate investments as well. But we think looking at specifically businesses who are working on solutions in there who look like us is another great way to fill that gap and give back to communities, really expanding ways that we think about enhancing our community.
I love that. I love the, that real having such a strong why and being more focused on, how can you best serve the communities that you are focused on, and then kind of like working backwards from that to decide like what investment vehicles might make the most sense when it comes to wealth. Like, you often hear about the wealth gap and how much that is an issue, but the health gap is also a real issue too. Especially, we're in COVID right now, and we look at like what communities are affected most by it. When it comes to you guys and what you're investing in or planning on investing in, on like the health and the digital aspect of it, do you see that being through what you're investing in, like the actual investments themselves, or is it like is it something that is maybe not investment specifically related? Because it's easy to kind of wrap your head around like the wealth aspect of it, but when it comes to like the health and the digital aspect of it, what does that look like?
When we think about the health divide, there's so many factors that contribute to a person's well-being. And really looking at businesses across the spectrum that are making an impact in Black communities, Black and Latinx communities. When you think about access to food, think about telemedicine. When you think about the doctors, primary caregivers that look like you, is there enough of that? When you think about drug rehabilitation, when you think about a lot of these businesses and programs that impact us, are they getting the investment that they need? Because we know that there's opportunities out there to better serve us and to close that health divide. But we want to make sure that we're enabling them by giving them not only capital, but access to our network as well as knowledge to continue to scale and reach more people.
And I think from the digital divide standpoint, right, there's kind of two angles, I guess, that we're looking at, right? There are actually solutions that will help close that, right? So give access to things like when you think about internet connectivity and other aspects of the digital divide that some of our communities may not have access to, right? So we're looking for companies who are solutioning to close that, but then also who's actually developing those technologies, right? Because we understand that when we're not in those rooms and are not actively involved with those developing those technologies, there's all kinds of biases that can be introduced, right? And so we need and want to promote Black and Latinx founders and people who are in those spaces developing those technologies and developing in a way that will serve our community, right? And we have unique either gaps or cultural differences that, this technology solutions really need to be targeted to us. Otherwise, that gap is just going to divide, right? Or grow even larger. And so that's kind of how we think about addressing, at least on the digital front.
Definitely. Ooh.
And just taking a step back, y'all first introduced that you were individually doing your own investment at first, and then later on came in collectively. Can you just highlight some of the struggles you had to do or overcome to be successful individually, and how did that translate once y'all came together as a company?
Yeah, I'm glad to talk a little bit more.
Sure.
So I think that
investing is scary.
Yes. So investing it's scary because you're jumping off of a cliff, right? Like you're doing a trust fall. You're taking a big bet, right? And it's always harder to do that by yourself for a number of reasons. One, a lot of the investments you want to do, you need more capital. Yep. Like one of the things I think people always miss is like investing is like, it's a team sport, right? Adding another person to your team only adds value to your investments, right? So I think one is getting over that, capital hurdle and adding in more people can de-risk it for you, right? You're not taking all of your savings. You're taking now half your savings because you and your buddy are doing it together. The second piece and the thing that can make it feel like less of a risk is the knowledge gap. So how do we, bring people in and work with our friends who might know a little bit more about that sector or might feel a little bit more comfortable with real estate or have already bought their personal property. So they're going to feel a little bit more, comfortable as we go after, investment property. They're going to know a good broker to work with or whatever it may be. And I think across everything that we've done, we've said, hey, every time we come together, we learn so much from each other. We bring more capital to the table and we're able to do cooler, better deals, right? And we're able to bring more deals to the table as we think about it. And, with us and knowing that big unlock that it created, that's a lot of Cascades as well, right? So we talk about who we're investing in, but a huge portion of what we do is also our LPs, the people who are investing with us, right? Our big goal is to educate, right? The hope is that we are bringing a lot of other people along on this journey to help pool capital, put it to awesome businesses that are impacting our community, and along the way, make sure they're learning how to invest in businesses, how to invest in real estate so that we can do it collectively, pulling our capital. We can share that knowledge so it's less scary to everybody involved. And then if we do this really well, they go off and do it with more people. And, there's this knock-on effect of having more and more, ambitious Black folks who are investing and doing things that matter in our community.
Yeah. And I get just following on that, we've been in our LPs, our limited partner shoes, right? When in our journey as well. And, you asked individually, right? We've earned some scars, right? And so we've learned some of the hard ways in terms of all kinds of different types of deals, right? And so we want to take that knowledge and bring that so that others don't necessarily have to learn and maybe can avoid some of the bumps in the road that we did. Again, we can see ourselves because, we were really where our network is at some point, right? In terms of maybe experience or trepidations in terms of, different types of deals that we might want to do. And because we've done it, we've been doing it, we can bring that experience, that knowledge, and again, lower that barrier a bit in terms of that risk, right? And even some of that fear and confidence to invest your money and to deploy your hard-earned money into some of these vehicles.
To follow up on that point you just made around the education of it and some of the lessons that you've learned from your experience, and they say experience is the best teacher, but it's also the most painful teacher, right? Like all these scars. For people who are looking to invest and LPs that you'd be looking to co-invest with, like what ways are you either bridging or decreasing that learning curve, or finding ways to help them, be able to, not make maybe some of the same mistakes, or make the road a little easier as they get into their investing journey?
Yeah. With every deal that we do syndicate deals. We'll give our members an opportunity to really sit down and understand what each deal is. We don't just give it to them and say, cut a check for it. So there's always a learning opportunity to understand more about what all goes into the deal, and asking more of the detailed questions on understanding the risk, understanding the returns, understanding when payouts are, deadlines, et cetera. So it really gives them an opportunity to be more intentional about figuring out when they want to deploy their capital. So you have access to understanding these deals, but maybe you're not ready on the first one, and maybe you kind of want to see how things go. Well, continuing to stay with our network, you'll get more access to deals, and you'll say maybe the second or third one, you'll feel a little bit more comfortable after you've seen a few deals go by, you've seen a couple of numbers, you understand the timelines and what works best for your specific situation, because every deal doesn't work for everyone. Then you'll be able to make more of a better decision. So that's our hope within our network, is to really equip people individually for their specific situations, and making sure we bring them along and educate them on what they're signing up for.
And the only thing I know is all the time we're trying to have events, right? So whether it be connecting people so we can learn from each other, or bringing in investors who have done even more than us, right? To help talk about specific sectors or really interesting investment opportunities that they've gotten involved in. And I think, to your point, let somebody else learn the lesson and tell you about it. So we try to make sure that we're doing that. And, whenever I'm talking to folks, talking about the lessons I've learned, and, how I realized, we were in an agreement that wasn't working, and we restructured after a year, and it's turned into actually a pretty good agreement. How do we restructure? What were the things we thought about? Things that I would have never thought about up front, and how would I do it differently? So there's a lot of different ways to think about it.
With that being said, do you think you have the same amount of synergy if you weren't able to have the individual investment experience first?
I think that it would have taken us a very long time to deploy anything. If
you want to go far.
I love it. If you go at it alone, it takes you a while, but you'll pull the trigger. If none of us had experience and we're all in the room together, I think it would have just taken us a very long time to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I agree.
We would have been like just afraid, and we would have overanalyzed everything. And I think there's something about like once you've done a few investments and you pull the trigger, it's not so scary too. You're like, all right, look, I've done it before. Some of these do amazing, some of them do okay, and some of them don't do well. That's the nature of investing. And like that's what we're doing. And we're trying to take calculated risks that we think are going to do really well. And you can't take risk if you don't actually, go for it.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the areas specifically, as you guys have been just looking at investing landscape and places where you believe that your capital or your focus should go into? Can you talk more specifically about like, what some of those areas you're noticing are, and places that like, people should just be keeping their eyes on?
Want to speak more to the?
Yeah. You want to each take a divide and kind of talk a little bit about it?
We can do that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the three divides that we focus on: health, wealth, and digital. So we can kind of walk through some of the opportunity areas there. I think specifically within health, I'll actually speak to a deal that we did recently with a company called Better Chew. They are a meat alternative company, really set on creating more access to meat alternative food products by providing them direct to consumer, that they just recently launched as well. But for us, what that means is it's a direct impact on the food that people are intaking that directly affects their health outcomes. And so that's how we see setting up some of these businesses. So we see the food piece as a huge place in just overall health. So by continuing to focusing on building up that company and helping them scale, there's a huge opportunity there for us to make an impact on the community, considering the communities that they are currently serving.
Yep. And you want to do wealth or digital? Well, I'll take digital. You'll take digital. I'll go wealth. So on the wealth divide side, we're looking at it different ways. One, I would say, is real estate. Like it's obviously one, right? When you look at the wealth divide between Black and white community, or just Black community and the rest of the country, the biggest portion is often linked to home ownership. So being invested in real estate and making sure that we're investing in our communities, and like that all these, I mean, I live in Atlanta, and I look across a lot of the communities that, that we live in or that we've invested in. And a lot of the houses next door are owned by private equity funds, are owned by investors that live halfway across the country, have never seen this home, will never see this home. Who lives in that house is probably a Black family. And the moment that rent isn't going the right way, they're not going to be in that community anymore. That is not what we want to see. Right? Like this is the antithesis of what we want to see in our communities, as well as how we think about investing in real estate. So I say that's one side of it. And then there's other pieces of the wealth divide that we've looked at as well. So, there's a lot of stuff going on with, cryptocurrency. There's a lot of stuff that's going on with financial education and access to financial instruments. All of those pieces are things that we're looking at. But it's a really multifaceted one because it's so important for our community. It's something that that divide continues to grow. And it's just not acceptable.
Yeah, I think on the digital front, I mean, there's a lot of technology solutions that are getting a lot of attention. Things like artificial intelligence, big data, and I think there are a lot of opportunities, I guess, in the tech and VC industry are really heavily focused on that. But there are some specific ones that I think impact our community, right? So when you think about artificial intelligence, the data that is those algorithms are based off, what's the biases that are incorporated in that, right? So you'll notice that, there's certain applications on your phone, for example, that use video, right? And for example, even Zoom, right? There's, if you put on some of the filters, right, they may not be tuned for people of color, for example, right? And so, as they're doing their shading and rendering, have they taken people of color into consideration, right? And so I think when we're looking at companies, again, there's a lot of these technology companies in space, but which are the ones that really are having an impact on our community? I think that's a great example. We're seeing the proliferation of things like artificial intelligence everywhere, right? But there are companies who are and founders who are solutioning to say, hey, how are those solutions specifically for our community, the Black and Latinx community, right? And so I think there's a big opportunity in terms of supporting those founders who are specifically solutioning for our people, right? And so those are type of opportunities I think that we're looking at, in addition to many other just technology, software-based solutions, I think, in that space.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know that you mentioned that one of you guys is based in Atlanta. I know you guys are coming together in DC.
All of us. All of us.
Yeah.
Oh, well, the three of us are there. So there's 6 general partners in general. The 3 of us are all based out of Atlanta.
Yeah.
Got it. And so my question was going to be, because, you mentioned, let's say in the case of real estate, for example, you have people who are investing, who may be halfway across the country, and something that we know now with more remote work and sort of like hybrid work. And even when you're creating teams and coming together, you don't necessarily need to be physically in the same place to make the investments work, or to make the company move forward. How has the shift in the world, the way work in the world is going, impacted and affected Cascade Ventures moving forward? Like, the fact that, this is like a remote interview, and you guys are coming together in different cities. Like, how has like the way the direction world is moving in affected, your company and how you're sort of seeing, the way you can move forward?
It's given us more access. I think having the virtual environment really explode a lot more in the past couple of years has given us more opportunities to expand our network and to connect with our members. It also gives us more opportunities to deals that we might not have known about otherwise. So the opportunity has just become a lot grander than we probably would have imagined a year or 2 ago of what we have access to, because so much is on the internet. A lot can be done virtually. We don't have to be in person to sign off on everything. So it just created more access and more opportunities for us in our network.
I'd agree with that. And I just pile on too, like it's also pushed us to think, right? And look at things. If we have a deal that we closed, we talked about Better Too before. Just 2 days ago, one of our GPs was there walking their production facility, right? Something we had not seen at all, despite being invested in this company. And, a lot of that was COVID. And, one of the things that we were talking about with the team today is just like how we're going to continue to use technology to have these important discussions to drive in, but also as things open up, can we augment that and do a little bit of in-person to dig deep as we're doing diligence and really understand the operations and make sure that we're being as helpful as we can to each of our, our founders that we're supporting, who could be anywhere in the country, to your point.
Yeah, I guess the flip side of that is, you asked about the world changing, how has it affected us? Unfortunately with the pandemic, right, we haven't been able to have as many in-person events as probably we would have wanted to, right?
And a big part of our proposition is about the network and the community. Exactly.
So, as Jacob said, as things are opening up, we're really excited to do that. We're having our first or a happy hour today in DC later on. So we're now able to have some of these more in-person engagements, so that we can really, have that close connection with our network. And so, that's an unfortunate side effect, but again, hopefully we do that in a safe manner to better connect with our folks.
Cool. And my follow-up question is around, I heard about the cryptocurrency mentioned, and I don't know that there's a whole conversation that's growing too when it comes to the metaverse. And I think I heard this, it's going to be like a $8 trillion industry. It was mentioned. And what opportunities do you feel exist when it comes to, cryptocurrency and metaverse and Web3, as that's something that's area that's starting to grow in conversation? And oftentimes too, when you think about the Black community and the Latin community, these are communities that are often left behind when, as technologies advance, as well as how are you guys thinking about that, as far as your investment, investments go?
Yeah, I'm glad to start with this one. One of your earlier questions was what is the power of having multiple general partners? I can jump out and quickly say, I know very little about the space, but that works fine, right? Because, I have another general partner who, he has been, investing in NFTs for a while, right? And, has been working in the space and is super interested in it. So I'd say one, the beauty of having a lot of general partners with different backgrounds with different interests means that like you need to bring all of that together. So that's one thing that I just think is super exciting. But then to your point here, I think, not being super deep in the space, the thesis that I care most about is like, you look at a lot of these pieces, you look at things like NFTs, you look at just anywhere where the space is going, like, look, the Black community in America drives our culture. We generate so much, right? And we don't always get the value. And these kind of like decentralized assets, these decentralized ways of creating, art, media, culture, all these things are just going to be another form of our community creating a ton of value. And the question becomes, how do we capture it, right? So as I think about what I am excited to see and what like I hope our team is going to bring forward to the group to invest is going to be opportunities where people are saying, all right, this is a democratized form of currency, a democratized form of ownership. Are we actually seeing that democracy and who's owning it? And are there companies who are really driving to make that happen? And I've seen a couple. My hope is that we see more. And I am very excited to look at some and invest because that is going to be the next wave and we have to be ready for it. Otherwise, it's going to look like all the past waves that have come before with technology.
Cool.
So, being new to I don't know much about the VC space, but being new to the space, what are some of the challenges you didn't expect running a firm compared to doing your own individual investment? And on top of that, when looking for companies to invest in, how do y'all connect, or what's your sales channel, your customer channel?
So in regards to the second half of the question, a lot of how we find our deals is really through our networks. We're plugged in with a lot of different organizations and communities where we see founders, where we see deals happening all the time. And just by nature of the people we get to interact with at whether they're learning events, conferences, or we get introduced and passed on a lot of deals that way. And honestly, social media is a great way to find out what's happening, who's raising money, how can we be helpful. Folks will send us stuff. Having a social presence has definitely helped us because it allows people to know that we're open and available and interested in taking on deals and seeing how we can support both investors and founders. So that's been a couple of ways where we can continue to get our deal sourcing from. And your first question, can you repeat it one more time? Challenges.
Yeah, challenges run a VC firm compared to investments. Yeah.
Yeah, so we consider ourselves an investment group versus a VC fund. The way our model is set up is we do syndicate deals, which essentially means that there'll be a number of people on one line item on the cap table that would do the investment versus a VC is shaped a little bit differently than that. So the challenges that are affiliated with that coordination, setting that structure up, it's a little bit different than me just cutting a check and handing it to a business. But the beauty is that there's an opportunity for higher returns by doing things that might be a little bit more risky that I might not have done on my own.
Yeah. I think another thing in the VC space that we're finding that maybe we wouldn't have individually that we're starting to get into as an investment group is there are a lot of barriers and it almost seems intentional, right? There's language that's specific to VCs that we find that can keep people out, right? And so we really
even the term VC.
Exactly, right?
People are like, VC, I don't know what I'm doing.
Where you have a cap table, is it a save? Is it a convertible debt note? What round is this going to convert?
Right? And like, part of what we're really trying to do is break down those barriers, which is why you'll hear us say a lot, we're not a VC, right? Because there is a culture and expectation around that we're intentionally trying to get around. Because frankly, some of those spaces are not accessible to the Black and Latinx community, right? And so we will position ourselves to differentiate ourselves from those. Also, there's a huge heavy focus on only tech, right? But there's all kinds of other situations and solutions and out there that we're exploring. And so, I think finding that and us navigating our way around that, can be a challenge, but we also want to remove those challenges for our network.
And then maybe one last challenge I'd add on the softer side. One of the things I love about like our group is I've met all these folks at Georgia Tech. Like 4 of our GPs have PhDs in engineering. Like everybody is like super off the charts, super smart. And I think like one of the things that we tell our members is like, you get all of that. Like you get this group of people who are super intellectually curious, who want to learn, who are driving things forward, and who are looking at every single deal in a very meticulous way. On the flip side, what's happening behind the scenes, and I think probably our biggest challenge is like, we love to argue with each other. We love to be like, I want this to be the right investment, the right deal. So it means that on the backside, like it's great for the general members. It's like, oh, you get a very well vetted deal. You get like hours of discussion, a lot of due diligence. But internally, it's been like, how do we put the structure so that we can drive to decisions? Given we have so many like just amazing people in the room in every one of these discussions. Who wants to make sure that every deal we put forth is the best deal we can find and the best terms that we could drive.
Yeah, we're not going to give our folks a deal that we wouldn't invest in.
That actually brings me to my next question, which you mentioned there being the 6 of you might end up in some of these heated discussions. You all have your expertise and subject areas that you're more focused on, maybe even biased towards. Like, how do you guys resolve any challenges or like issues that could come up with the fact that there are 6 of you and you have to get to a consensus, or you have to have like be on the same page when it comes to how you interact with LPs and like outside investors?
They just gave me veto powers, so whenever we have conflicts, it's just like, what does he think, and then we're good.
No, I think part of it is really having the communication and transparency, right, amongst us, right, being very honest, and because we've known and worked with each other for so long and have that friendship, it helps, right? It helps to, we can always take a step back, even if the conversation does get heated, right? And we always put, our friendship and our relationship first, right? And so we can usually get around, hey, we may need to take a moment and get a hug or something like that, but we'll get through it and push ourselves through it. And as Jacob said, the process, having a rigorous process does help with some of that too. It takes some of the ambiguity out of it in our decision-making process. And so, that also helps, avoid some of those pitfalls.
And always going back to the North Star, we created a mission now over a year ago and saying, really aligning on what are we trying to accomplish? And at the end of that exercise, turning to everyone and saying, does this sound like your personal mission in life? And if that's true, then we know you're always going to be living in your purpose, because this is what the mission, not only of this company is, but it's your mission to be doing. So I think that's also helpful with navigating some of the conversations that we have.
And I know that you've been friends for a long time as well. You mentioned meeting at Georgia Tech, and so I'm sure there are a lot of upsides to running a company with your friends. Do you feel like that the business partnership, that there has to be a separation between, like, when you're running the company, between the friendship and the business, or like how do you guys navigate that aspect of it?
They're not separated.
Yeah.
It's one and the same for me. I care for them as friends, like I do business partners.
I mean, we have multiple calls that have ended with "I love you." Yeah. Like, and like it's important. Look, we all have amazing careers that we're driving. Like, we all walk into offices every day and people don't look like us. Right. Yeah. And you're constantly having to like shape into an office environment. Right. And I think a very purposeful part of what we're doing is saying, I want to invest with my friends and I want to do it on our own terms. And I want to do it with a language that we speak. And I want to do it to the deals that we want to see. And, I want to laugh and I want to be able to like kick my feet up. And like, there aren't that many places where you're working at the level that we're working. You can just totally feel you within your skin while you're doing something that is within your purpose that you believe in. And I think like it's fundamental what we're doing. I don't think any of us would want to spend as much time as we do on this if it wasn't coming from that place.
Yeah, they always say you want to love the people that you work with. Like, people is such a huge critical factor in happiness when you think about work, especially for how long you do it. And I remember growing up, my family used to always be like, never get into business with your family or your friends. Yeah. And now I have multiple businesses with all of my friends because, and I think just to a lesson learned is just making sure that you set up all the legal things in advance, having that operating agreement, really understanding who you're going to be working with, how things are going to be structured, making sure that is taken care of upfront, getting that out the way. Then you can just, work on the business and building it at whatever pace the friends decide.
It's interesting that you bring that up, like how growing up, because I used to hear that a lot too, keep, business and friendship separate, or don't start businesses with friends or family. But when you think about it, a lot of the biggest business empires we know were built by families or built by people who are very close to each other. And it's very interesting but especially I feel like in our communities that we often hear that, and
yeah. I know you're totally right. Like a lot of what we spend our time doing and talk about are like, how do we break down some of these myths, right? Like debt is a bad thing.
Yep.
No, it's not. Like it can actually be a very powerful tool. Working with your friends is a horrible idea. Like, why would I want to spend time with people that aren't my friends? Like, and I think you look at, a lot of the major corporations, the biggest companies. We live in Atlanta, Chick-fil-A, family-run business, family after family after family. Why wouldn't you want to do, if you have the option, why would you go for something different?
Yeah, for sure.
True. So what piece of advice would you give people from our community watching right now to know about how to invest or build wealth? One piece of information you think that will move them along or persuade them to start the journey early or right now?
Well, one, sign up for Cascades. I think don't feel like you have to go in it alone, right? Of course, we'd love for folks to join our network, but in general, right? Find like-minded people who, you can ask them these questions. I know that can be difficult, right? Especially in our community, which is big reason why we wanted to do this, why we wanted to create that kind of central place that people can come, feel open, ask those questions. But I would say, don't feel like you have to go in it alone. There's a lot of knowledge out there. Find ways to tap into it. Find places people that you can trust to get educated and to feel more confident as you're doing it. I think once you jump into that first, it really makes it way easier for the remaining ones, right? Because there's a lot of the barriers really, mental, right? It's fear, right? And then, so getting through that first one is kind of, then it makes it a lot easier going forward.
Yeah, the thing I would add is start tomorrow, right? The way that I tell
compound interest,
like, no, but it's so real. Like there is a risk that you could lose money if you invest, right? Absolutely. But there is a guarantee that you will lose money if you do not. And it's that simple. We just saw the interest rate, like in January, the inflation rate, 7%. So every dollar that you had just lost 7% last year if you were just leaving it in an account, right? And look at all the wealthiest people in the world. Are they leaving money in accounts, right? So this idea that like being afraid of investing because you're going to lose it all is, again, one of those myths you got to get past. Like there are different types of investment. Yes, there are investments where you could lose all your money. There's all types of investments that lie in between that do different things. And the one thing that I can guarantee you about investing is if you don't do it, you are losing money.
The cost of not doing it too.
Yeah.
I'll just add one more thing specific to the Black and Brown community. My advice would be to make sure you have the basics covered, right? Investing should be in excess of making sure you have good financial health in all the other areas, making sure that your housing is covered, your meals are covered, your bills are being paid, you're maxing out your Roth, and then you come see us because you can get all the education on the in-between, but actually invest once you really get, yourself financially set up. So we want to be here to help people, to bring folks along the journey, but we also don't want people to be risking money on things that should be spent on necessities and making sure that they're preparing themselves for the future.
And just one follow-up question off of that. So since, we are trying to expand the number of people or Black and Brown people investing, can you share some of your experience of some of your greatest losses and achievements in the space, if you feel free, just to give perspective of how it goes?
Yeah. I can give a loss for sure, and I can give an achievement as well. A deal that I did 2 years ago, it was with a friend, and he's somebody I've known for a long time. So I didn't do diligence. I was like, I know him. He's a stand-up guy. There's something he's working on, and like I'm gonna go and invest. And I invested with him a small amount. It went well, great. And he came back for a second time, and I was like, all right, now I feel good. I pulled in another buddy. We both doubled up. We invested, and it was just before COVID. And I remember sitting there with him in February and saying, this COVID thing, like the way that you're investing, like it's an event-driven return, blah, blah, blah. I was like, do you feel good? Do you have a backup plan? And he was like, yes. And I was like, are you sure? He was like, yes. And I did not dig into it enough. And sure enough, COVID came, the investment went south, and we ended up losing money. That's okay. I mean, it wasn't ideal by any means. Am I happy about it? No, but am I living in other, have I made more on other investments? Absolutely. So it happens. And I think my biggest takeaway there is like, do your diligence. Like, don't ever go ahead and say, all right, like, yes is enough. Yeah. And then on the flip side, with that same person who, we ended up losing some money on, him and one more friend, we own a property in Atlanta that is right on the Beltline that we bought, that was totally abandoned, that had mildew, that, was in horrible shape. We rehabbed it. And actually my two little sisters live in it. They get to have really cheap rent. We are making money every month, and we own a property in like a very awesome place in Atlanta, and I can walk to it from my house. So the upside has been like, I can walk to go see my little sisters every day while we have a property that's doing great and they have like a very cheap rent. And that's something that I could feel great about. And we've returned anything we ever lost on that one deal with that one and more.
Cool. Yeah. So, and I know that the three of you, not all six of you, but three of you are based in Atlanta, and we know Atlanta to be a mecca for Black excellence, and there's a lot of capital like in Atlanta, especially.
Did you say it's the best city in America? Because I think that's what I just heard. I absolutely agree with you, my friend.
I mean, I don't know if I'd go as far as that. That might be another conversation. But what do you think makes Atlanta such a hub for Black businesses?
Should we defer to the native?
So I'm in Atlanta. I'm a Grady baby. I went to school. I've lived there my entire life aside from 3 years. Here's what I will say: Black people top to bottom. Like, and that's the real thing, right? Like at political leadership, there are Black people there.
Yep.
Board leadership, there are Black people there. Corporation leadership, there are Black people there. Small business leadership, there are Black people there. Look at all the contracts, there are Black people. And it's that involvement end to end. Now, does Atlanta have challenges? No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Do we have equity issues? No doubt about it. Can we do better on like our ladders to economic mobility and opportunity? Absolutely, right? There's a lot of work to do, but I think the thing that differentiates Atlanta from other cities is just like you can look in any room, whether it be a corporate, a boardroom, even Georgia State, the biggest university system right there, led by a Black male who went to Georgia Tech. Like all of this is there, and it's powerful and it's inspiring. I think that's part of the reason like young people come.
That's why I came.
It's already like, yo, I'm in the best restaurant in Atlanta, and a third of the people here, half the people here are Black, and like that is inspiring to just live in.
Yeah. The energy is very different.
I can feel. I mean, you said that so passionate. So much. I felt that. Where did the name Cascade Ventures come from? Like, how'd you guys come up with the name?
Yeah. So really, one of the historic Black neighborhoods in Atlanta for wealthy African Americans is called Cascades. So when we were thinking about, being true to those Atlanta roots and where, exactly, where we came through, we were just trying to think what captures that, right? And so I think, focusing on that neighborhood and even the challenges that neighborhood has gone through. You think about the history of Atlanta and how that group was really ostracized. Through even before civil rights. And so we thought that really captures not only the goal of where we want to take ourselves and our network, all right, in terms of wealth building, all right, but also getting through and pushing through those challenges, right? Because I think in the investment space, we're also seeing challenges. And again, we want to lower those barriers for our members. We just thought that really captures a lot of what we're trying to do.
And that's super cool because when we hear about these different areas across the country where there were certain periods in history, just a lot of Black wealth, and so like being able to put that name in the forefront is very powerful, for sure. So questions. A question that we like to ask, because we're starting to round out the interview. We like to ask all of our guests, if you had to give advice to your younger self. And so like you guys have been investing for a long time, and now you've sort of come together. What would you tell your younger self, I said, before you started really getting into investing? What advice would you give, not knowing like the ups and downs, like the lessons, the losses that would turn to lessons, the highs and the lows? Like, what would you tell that younger you?
I know for me, it would have been start earlier.
That's the biggest one.
And I think for me, particularly in the real estate, right? Even though I've been doing it for a little while now, I wish I would have started even earlier. Like I said, for a number of reasons, but also market conditions, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when the 2008, right, when housing prices were right before that going down, right, there were a lot of opportunities, particularly in Atlanta, that I didn't go for, right, and maybe wasn't even on my radar at the time. And so, yeah, definitely that's a big one. Start earlier.
Yeah, on the start early, I would have educated myself earlier on all types of investing, right? I think, especially as engineers, we come out of school, we make jobs probably making a lot more than many people in our family, but no one really explains 401ks to us. No one really explains that. There was never like a period of time where anyone sat down and taught me these things. I eventually figured them out, but I'm always wondering, like, why isn't this in like high school curriculum or some type of mandated curriculum, so that I can, make sure I have my ducks in a row. So just making sure that I always increase any type of access to education is so important to us. And that's a lot of what we get to do with Cascades. But I would definitely tell my younger self to just continue to be curious and to go find the information.
Yeah. I think just starting early, I think the thing I would add on is there's nothing too small to start with as well.
Yeah,
I think like people often want to say like, let me get to this number and then I'm going to go and invest it, right? But if you really look at how people build wealth, they're constantly investing. And, if you have $100, I mean, if you took, $100 10 years ago and bought Apple stock, you got a lot of money now, right, for that $100. And I think like that happens, right? And that's what people are doing, whether they be zero cost averaging and like constantly putting it into the markets, or they're buying real estate over time. I was just looking down and trying to look up, if instead of buying a Tesla a few years ago, you had to buy Tesla stock, how much it would be worth. And I can't find the final number here, but it's huge. I think if you had bought in 2012, instead of buying a Tesla car, you had to buy Tesla stock. So put that money in. That $77,000 would have gone to 9.4 million, right? So put it in, let time do its thing. Always, be smart, but time's a really powerful thing in investing, and whether it's $10 or $10,000, start putting things in the market if you have that availability. Don't let it sit and do it like a savings account and not do much.
Cool.
Just one more question. We haven't asked this in a minute. So where do y'all envision Cascade Ventures to be as a company 5 years from now? What's the vision for the company going forward?
We're making deals. I mean, really, we're here to invest in our community, uplift our community, connect our community. And that's really the focus over the next couple of years. It's about scaling what we've been doing so far, really taking all the knowledge that we've gained, the lessons that we're learning, and figuring out how do we get more people involved? How do we change the face of investing? How do we support founders and make sure that there are solutions out there that are going to be for our community?
Cool. And then for people who want to, kind of stay engaged with Cascade Ventures, or if they want to connect with you, I know you have the network event in DC today, but in general, like how can people, kind of get up to speed with what you guys got going on?
Yeah, find us on Instagram, LinkedIn. Our handle is Cascades with an S, Ventures with an S group.
Cool. And then before we head out, are there any just words of wisdom or anything you'd like to say to our audience regarding investing or just the journey that, Cascade is on?
No matter what level you're on, just sign up for Cascades. Go to cascadesvg.com.
I like that. Cool. Well, this has been Pepper Soup Talk Show. We're here with these three brilliant investors who are part of Cascade Venture Group, and we look forward to kind of seeing where you take things and staying tuned with your journey.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
for
so much for
having
having
us.
us.
Yes.
No, thank you. Cool. Yeah. We hope you guys have a good rest of your day.